Today we're diving into something a little different. Yeah. We're taking a deep dive into the movie Finch with Tom Hanks.
Okay.
And you've given me a really fascinating mix of reviews and articles and even some video essays about it. So it seems like there might be more to this film than just your typical post-apocalyptic story.
Yeah, it is interesting because, like you said, the premise, kind of has those classic beats of
right.
desolate landscapes and struggling to survive.
Yeah.
But a lot of these reviews, they really focus on the heart of the film.
Okay.
That's like heartwarming, emotional core.
Okay.
Seems like it's as much about, companionship and hope as it is about, actually navigating this world after some kind of disaster.
Yeah. And just to remind me, what's the basic plot of the film?
Finch, it centers on this inventor.
Okay.
And he's dying from radiation poisoning.
Oh, wow.
After some kind of solar event.
Okay.
And he decides to build a robot to care for his dog after he's gone. And their destination is San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
But it really becomes more about this journey that they take together.
Gotcha.
And kind of, the bond that they form, what they learn along the way.
I can see how that would be, there's a lot to unpack there.
Right.
And a couple of these sources mention that classic Amblin entertainment vibe, like E.T. or AI.
Yeah.
And one reviewer even wondered if Spielberg himself would have been a better fit.
Interesting.
As director, given the film's themes.
I mean, I can see where they're coming from.
Right.
Because it does have that blend of sci-fi, but also this
right.
really heart-tugging emotion.
Yeah.
Which is definitely something that he's known for.
Totally.
So it'd be really interesting to see how this film stacks up.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of heartwarming, one of the reviewers compared the robot to a blend of Wall-E and Chappie.
Interesting.
So I'm really curious to see how those two kind of...
Yeah, what does that even look like?
Combine into one, robotic personality.
Right. And how do you even blend those two? Because those are two very distinct personalities, right?
Right. Wall-E had me in tears.
Yeah.
And Chappie had its moments. But I'm ready to see what this new robot, Jeff, brings to the table.
Yeah.
And let's not forget about the dog, Goodyear.
Yeah.
Apparently, he's played by a real rescue pup named Seamus.
Ah, that's awesome.
So it sounds like he might be giving Tom Hanks a run for his money.
Right.
In the acting department.
Well, who's going to steal the show here?
Okay.
The robot, the dog, or?
Well, since we're on the topic of Tom Hanks, obviously everyone agrees that his performance in this is fantastic.
Of course.
But the sources that you sent me went a little bit beyond just praising his performance.
Okay.
One of the reviewers made kind of a fascinating point.
Okay.
They wondered if maybe we've started to take his talent for granted.
What do you mean?
Because he's so consistently good, we just sort of expect it. Even in films that aren't, trying to be these big blockbusters.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because it's like when someone is that good, it's like you just expect it every time. And so it's like,
right.
Do we not appreciate it as much as we should?
Exactly. And so it sounds like he really elevates this material.
Okay.
And several reviewers highlighted his ability to convey really subtle emotions.
Right.
And create this believable bond with a robot and a dog.
Well, that's the thing with here is that he's always so believable.
Yes.
You always believe that he's really feeling these emotions.
Totally. And it makes you feel it too.
Yes.
Which is the sign of a good actor.
Absolutely.
So speaking of really good actors, the actor who voices and brings to life Jeff is Caleb Landry Jones.
Oh, wow.
You might recognize him from Get Out.
Okay.
Or X-Men First Class.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So from those intense...
From those roles to this...
This heartwarming robot.
Yeah, that's quite a range.
Talk about range. So what did your sources say about his performance?
So one of the reviewers was really impressed with the motion capture technology that they used to translate his movements into Jeff's movement.
Oh, wow.
Apparently, it's incredibly detailed.
Oh, wow.
All these really subtle gestures that make Jeff feel very lifelike.
See, that's what I think is so fascinating about motion capture and that type of stuff.
Right.
It's one thing to just voice a CGI character,
right,
but to actually embody their movements and their expressions.
It's another level.
Adds a whole other layer to the performance.
For sure.
So I'm even more curious now to see this Jeff character.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't forget about Seamus as Goodyear.
Yeah.
You know, the real star of the show.
He's going to steal the show, I'm telling you.
He might. And what's great is he's not talking. He's not wearing clothes. It's just him.
It's just him being a dog.
Yeah.
But so many reviewers emphasize how important his presence is to both Finch and Jeff's emotional journeys.
Well, yeah. I mean, he provides that unconditional love.
Yeah.
That, you know, arguably only a dog can provide.
Exactly. And you know what's amazing about that is...
What's that?
They don't have to make him talk.
Right.
They don't have to give him any of those, you know, talking dog tropes or whatever.
Right.
It's just...
He can just be a dog.
He can just be a dog, and it still comes through.
Yeah.
So what did your sources say about the dynamic between Goodyear and Jeff?
So one of the reviewers described it, and I love this, as like a heartwarming slow dance of acceptance.
Oh, that's good.
Because, you know, Goodyear is understandably a little cautious of Jeff at first.
Right.
But, you know, as they kind of learn to coexist, Goodyear starts to warm up to him. And I think it just shows that, you know, patience and understanding can go a long way, even between a robot and a dog.
I love that.
Right.
So we've got Tom Hanks. We've got this robot who's learning about humanity.
Right.
And we've got this adorable dog.
Yes.
But what about the world that they're in? This post-apocalyptic setting.
So, yeah, it's not all, you know, sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
They definitely don't shy away from showing like the harsh realities of this world that they're living in.
Okay.
But a lot of the reviewers were really struck by the visual beauty of these desolate landscapes.
Okay.
One of them even compared it to like a classic Western.
Oh, interesting.
But like with this like haunting futuristic twist.
That is interesting because I do feel like there is a certain beauty to those landscapes. You know, like when you think about post-apocalyptic films.
It's eerie, but beautiful.
Yeah. Did your sources mention anything specific about like the visual style of the film?
Yeah. So one article talked about how the cinematographer uses a lot of light and shadow to create this sense of danger, but also hope within the same frame. And they actually use the phrase visual poetry.
Wow, I was going to say that sounds very poetic.
Right.
And I love that because it does seem like they're trying to find,
yes,
you know, beauty in the most unexpected of places.
Exactly.
Which again makes me think about those Spielberg comparisons and, you know, like his films always had that element to it. So it sounds like they're really trying to elevate this.
Definitely.
You know, beyond your typical...
Right. It's not just an action film.
Exactly.
Right.
Which seems to be reflected in the critical reception as well.
So that's where things get really interesting.
Okay. Tell me more.
Because pretty much all the reviewers praised, you know, Tom Hanks's performance and the, you know, the technical achievements of the film.
Right.
But there were very different opinions on whether Finch fully delivers on like all of its big ideas and themes.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to dive into these contrasting viewpoints a little bit.
Yes, let's do it.
To get a better sense of, you know, what's the critical landscape around this film?
Absolutely. So one critic put it this way, and I thought this is really interesting.
Okay.
They said that Finch isn't just about surviving the apocalypse. It's about like justifying your existence in the face of it.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
That's heavy, but it's
deep.
It makes you think, like, yeah, if you were
the last one,
a last man on Earth,
or close to it,
why keep going?
Yeah, like, what's the point?
What's the point of it all?
Exactly. And so for Finch, like, the answer is Goodyear.
Oh.
You know, like, he's driven by this love for his dog.
Yeah.
And that's what motivates him to build Jeff.
Okay.
So that Goodyear will be taken care of even when he's gone.
That's kind of beautiful in a way.
It is.
It's like one of the articles said he's not just teaching Jeff to survive, he's teaching him to love.
Exactly.
Like in this world, that's lost so much of it.
Yes. And that's what really resonated with me too, is like this idea of legacy. You know, he's not concerned with like rebuilding society.
Right.
He's focused on passing on these values.
Okay.
This like little piece of humanity to this robot.
Do you think that's realistic?
I don't know.
Like to instill such complex emotions in a machine?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is a big question.
Like, are we just creating these sophisticated mimics?
Right.
Or is there something more there?
And it sounds like your sources.
Right, because some people...
Just kind of grappling with that.
Yes. Like some reviewers were like, oh my God, this is so emotional. And like, this is what it means to be human.
Right.
And then other people were like, I don't know if I buy it.
Right, like a robot can't...
Like a robot can't feel those things.
Understand those complex emotions.
Right. And then it makes you think about like, okay, well, what about the future of AI?
Right.
Like, is this something that we're going to have to deal with?
Well, and I like that they don't necessarily answer that question in the film.
Exactly.
It's more like they present it and then they let the audience kind of...
They leave it up to you.
Decide, right? Which I think is more interesting.
It's definitely more interesting than just being like, and here's the answer.
Right.
But I do want to kind of circle back to something you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
About the criticisms the sources brought up.
Okay.
Because you were talking about, some people didn't think it fully delivered on those themes and stuff.
So one criticism was the lack of human interaction.
Okay.
Like beyond Finch.
Okay.
Because it's really just him, the robot, and the dog for most of it.
Right.
And some reviewers thought that that was a really effective storytelling device.
Okay.
Because it emphasizes like how intimate those relationships are.
Right.
But then other reviewers thought it was kind of limiting.
Interesting.
Like they wanted to see them interact with other people.
See, I can see both sides of that.
Right.
Because I think by, stripping away all of that.
The
complexities of other human relationships.
Right.
It allows you to just focus on.
Like that core relationship, that very primal core relationship between these characters.
Right. But then I can also see how it might be interesting to see like, okay, if they encounter other people,
right,
how do they react?
Like, how does that change their dynamic?
Exactly. So it's all about perspective.
There you go.
Another thing that people were kind of mixed on was the pacing.
Okay. How so?
So like some people thought that the slower moments were really important.
Okay.
For like developing the characters.
Right. Yeah.
Creating that like emotional impact. Mm-hmm. But other people felt like it was a little slow.
Like it dragged in certain places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think it just depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah. It sounds like this is a film that you really have to kind of like.
Yeah. You got to be in the mood for it.
Be in the mood for it and be patient with it.
Yeah. And be okay with like sitting with the characters.
Yeah.
And like feeling their emotions.
It's not like an action-packed thrill ride.
No. It's definitely more like...
It's a slower burn.
Yes. Which is where I think those Amblin vibes come in again.
Yes.
Well, because if you think about those films...
They're not afraid to like...
They're not afraid to slow down and let those moments breathe.
Exactly. Like think about E.T.
Right.
Like those lingering shots.
Right.
Where it's just like quiet and you're like taking it all in.
And they just let it sit there.
Yes.
And you know what's so great about that is... Those are the moments that you remember.
Exactly.
Like you walk out of the theater and you're like...
You're thinking about it.
Yeah. And it sounds like Finch is going for that same kind of...
That emotional resonance.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that comes from the sound design.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that because I was really interested by what your sources said about that.
Oh, yeah.
Because it sounds like they use sound in a very specific way.
So they use a mix of music and silence and like ambient noise
to
create this atmosphere.
And it's so effective, isn't it?
Yes.
When it's done well.
So one of the reviewers actually is a musician.
Oh, wow.
And they said that the score is like a character in itself.
Wow. I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how the composer uses these like really sparse, haunting melodies.
Okay.
To kind of underscore like the emptiness of the world.
Wow.
But then also highlight like the beauty of those relationships.
That's what I love about film scores.
I know, me too.
Is that they can do that without you even realizing it.
Right. They can completely change.
Like they can make you feel a certain way.
Exactly.
Did your sources give any specific examples of how they use sound?
So there's this one scene where Finch and Jeff are caught in a dust storm.
Oh, gosh.
And the reviewer was talking about how they use the sound of the wind.
Oh, wow.
And like the RV is shaking.
Oh, my gosh.
And then there's this like faint music playing on a radio.
Oh, wow.
And it just creates this like really intense atmosphere.
Wow. That just gave me chills just hearing you describe it. Because it's like you're right there with them.
Yes. You're in the RV with them.
You can feel the dust in your teeth and everything.
And it sounds like they use silence in a really powerful way, too.
Oh, okay. Like how...
It's like there are these moments where it's just quiet.
Yeah.
And you can just focus on the characters and their emotions.
It's like that saying, silence speaks volumes.
Exactly.
Sometimes you don't need all the,
the bells and whistles.
Bells and whistles music.
Yeah.
You just need a moment of quiet.
Exactly.
And then when they do break that silence, it's often with these moments of humor.
Yes.
That your sources were talking about.
Which I love because it's not all doom and gloom.
Right.
Like there are moments of levity.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's really important.
Because it's a story about survival and loss and all that.
Right. But it's also about
the moments of joy.
finding joy in unexpected places.
That make it all worthwhile.
Exactly.
Did they give any specific examples of those humorous moments?
Yeah, so there's this one scene where Jeff is, trying to be helpful.
Okay.
But he, totally misunderstands a social cue.
Oh, no.
And he ends up accidentally insulting this other robot that they meet on the road.
Oh, Jeff.
I know, right?
Poor Jeff.
But it's those kinds of moments that make you laugh.
It's so true.
Because he doesn't know any better.
He doesn't. He's learning.
He's trying. And that's the thing is that, Finch uses those moments to teach him.
That's sweet.
So it's like a learning experience. Yeah. It's really heartwarming to watch.
Ah, that's nice. It really makes you think about those comparisons that some of the sources made to the classic Amblin film?
Like E.T.?
Yeah, like E.T. and AI. Yep. Do you think that comparison holds up?
That's a really good question.
Is Finch trying to capture that same kind of childlike wonder, even though it's set in this post-apocalyptic world?
Right. Well, one thing that several reviewers pointed out was that even though it's, the future is bleak.
Right.
They never lose sight of that hope.
Right.
That Spielberg is known for.
That optimism.
Right. There's still that celebration of life.
Yeah.
Even though they're surrounded by,
destruction.
Yeah.
It's almost like they took that classic formula, extraordinary found in the ordinary.
Right.
And they just put it up against this backdrop of
exactly
survival.
But I think that's what makes it so interesting.
But what I find interesting is that unlike those older Amblin films, this one seems to be sparking a lot of conversation about...
About what?
AI.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah, because you can't watch this movie and not think about
right.
Okay, as we get closer and closer to, to
making AI.
To having AI in our lives.
For reality.
What does that mean?
Yeah, is there going to be a point where we can't tell the difference between what's programmed and what's
real?
Real.
Right.
And I think it's really smart that they don't shy away from that. They really make you think about it.
It makes you think.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hit you over the head with it.
Right.
It's still a very emotional film.
Right.
At its core.
It sounds like Finch is one of those films that really stays with you.
Oh, for sure.
Even after you've seen it.
Definitely.
It makes you think about things.
It makes you think.
It makes you feel things.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it.
And that's what makes a good film.
Exactly. And it's what makes this a good deep dive.
This has been The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.